There's a phrase you hear sometimes called not being a drama queen, or somebody will say, oh, it's a no drama Peele. This edition of LPP podcast is we're, quote, no trauma. And the way I'm going to go about that is to talk about a few movies. Cinema and literature and TV in America is all trauma and all grief all the time. In season 2, it was revealed that Ted Lasso's dad had committed suicide, which is sort of, it turns out, why he's a nice guy, because he was traumatized. And that's just one example. Everything in America is about trauma and prolonged grief. And that's so wonderful that we're coping with all that, except as we've reviewed several times with Taylor Swift and the most prominent people in America, Americans are miserable. They have the worst suicide rate of any rich country. And in the global burden of health, they have the worst drug and mental health outcomes in terms of years lost due to disability and death. So we're celebrating our misery at the same time that we're paying for it. Except not everybody does that. There seem to be a few people making movies that take a different tack, a few creative people, and I go to those movies. So the New York Times picked the 6 best films from the first half of 2023. And there are 3 of them. I'm going to review them quickly, I hope. The first one is the most important. It's called Showing Up. And the director is Kelly Reichardt, and Michelle Williams is the actress. And they've worked together for a number of films. So the title already is Showing Up. Isn't that kind of suggestive? It's sort of, well, life is here. You show up and you live it. So the New York Times reviewed it, and this is a quote: "The movies love tortured artists, inflamed geniuses who thunder against the establishment, aesthetic conventions, their historical epics, God. But in Showing Up, nothing like that happens." The main character, Lizzie, is played by Michelle Williams. At one point, it's stubbornly independent hero Lizzie, a sculptor played by a revelatory, notably deglammed Michelle Williams, leaves an angry message on a colleague's voicemail, an expletive-laced tirade that ends with the comical bleat, "Have a great night." And that's the most drama and trauma that happens in the movie. So Michelle Williams is kind of the heroine of this little podcast. At Wikipedia, this is her quick bio. Michelle Williams is known primarily for starring in small-scale independent films with dark or tragic themes. But I disagree. She's kind of my hero because she doesn't submerge herself in dark themes. And I just want to go a little bit into her background. She's possibly most famous for making Brokeback Mountain with Heath Ledger, whom she married and had a child with. And he died by dint of a bunch of drugs. And they were separated at the time. So going back to her family, she was raised in Montana originally. Although she has described her family as not terribly closely knit, she shared a close bond with her father, who taught her to fish and shoot, originally in Montana, and encouraged her to become a keen reader. Williams has recounted the fond memories of growing up in the vast landscape of Montana. When she was 9, the family moved to San Diego, California. She has said of the experience, it was less happy, probably by virtue of being my preteen years, which are perhaps unpleasant wherever you go. She mostly kept to herself and was self-reliant. So what's the story there? She had a close relationship with her father, but her childhood wasn't especially happy. But she's not telling a story about trauma. She certainly wasn't violated or abused.
The show that you're describing, is this a show that's supposed to invoke this person's trauma? Like you're reading a background about somebody, and I'm not hearing anything traumatic, is what I mean.
Well, she's talking about her background, that it wasn't perfectly happy. She's being honest, but she doesn't say it's ruined her, and she doesn't say anybody's traumatized her.
Got it.
It's a non-traumatized, complex background, which we sort of don't have in America anymore. To be honest, Zach, she reminded me slightly of you, because she's a person who progresses in life, and as we'll go along, she does her work. She's encountered some difficulties, but she doesn't reveal everything about herself, and yet she's still capable of pointing out flaws in the system. That's why I admire her. By 1995, Williams had completed 9th grade at Santa Fe Christian schools in San Diego. Now, if you sort of know Michelle Williams now, Christian girls' school doesn't sound like her. This is from Wikipedia. She disliked going there as she did not get along well with other students. So this is not a promising background, perhaps. To focus on her acting pursuits, she left the school and enrolled in home tutoring. At age 15, with her parents' approval, Williams filed for emancipation so she could better pursue her acting career. You sort of can't go out and work if you're 15, so you have to emancipate yourself. If you ever see Michelle Williams be interviewed, you don't think of her as somebody who gets emancipated at 15. She's very low key. She's not a trauma queen. She's not a drama queen. She wasn't the class clown, but she did what she had to do and what she wanted to do. So she became famous almost instantly. She got a job in the New Lassie. And then she became famous because she did Dawson's Creek. By the way, I've seen a fair number of her films, but I'm not an expert on her. I've never seen her drama work. I haven't seen all of her movies, but in Dawson's Creek, it was on for 5 years. It was the mainstream television program. And this is what she said about it. My taste was in contradiction to what I was doing every single day. That's called a job. I believe she was paid well. She would film the series for 9 months each year and spend the remaining time playing against type in independent movies, which she considered a better fit for her personality. She said the financial stability of a steady job empowered her to act in such films. So that, again, that somewhat reminds me of you. You know what I mean? It wasn't that like everything she was doing in her work environment was all about her, but she worked her best. She got a good job. She made a living, and she did what she considered was important for her. Then she became famous for making Brokeback Mountain, where she met Heath Ledger, whom she married and had a child by. And then Heath Ledger died. But at the time he died, he was living apart from her and her child. So, life isn't perfect, is it? After that, Williams began filming Kelly Reichardt's films. She's made four with them. Wendy and Lucy, playing the part of a poor and lonesome young woman traveling with her dog and looking for employment. With a shooting budget of $300,000, the film was shot on location in Portland, Oregon, with a largely volunteer crew. Williams had just separated from Ledger and was relieved for the anonymity the project provided. She was pleased with Reichardt's, the director's, minimalist approach and identified with her character's self-sufficiency and fortitude. Sounds like a life worth living, you know what I mean? She made a film that reflected who she was, the underdog. And despite the film's bleakness, she found a connection with her character's desire to reclaim her life in the face of tragedy. That's sort of the no trauma theme song. Do you know what I mean?
Reclaim in the face of tragedy.
The character,
yeah,
and which was her life. Describing Williams' off-screen persona, Debbie McQuaid of Stylist magazine wrote in 2016 that she is, quote, predictably petite, but her poise and posture make her seem larger than life. How do you do that? How are you a quiet person and yet you project such strength? I don't know the answer to that. Although reluctant to publicly discuss her romantic relationships, she's totally not out there in People magazine. Williams was forthright in expressing her grief over Ledger's death, saying it had left a permanent hole in both her and her daughter's life. Well, she has since affirmed her determination to look after her daughter in spite of her difficulties as a single parent. In 2018, she opened up about her relationship and marriage to Phil Elverum to provide grieving women with inspiration. She married a musician, and that lasted about a year. But you notice what she feels she has to do? She doesn't talk about her personal life. After Heath Ledger died, she married a guy for a year. It wasn't a good life choice, but it was a lesson. People do that sort of thing. I'm going to talk more about Michelle Williams and Kelly Reichardt later. I just want to talk about a second film I saw. I'm not making these films up. New York Times has rated them 3 of the best films of the year so far. There's a film called Sanctuary, and a guy answers the door, and a woman comes in, and she starts putting him down. And you're saying, what's this film about? And it turns out she's a dominatrix. It's a movie about an interaction between a client and a dominatrix. And somewhere along the road, he says, you're departing from the script. I wrote the script, and now you're dominatrixing me in new ways. And it turns out he's the heir to a big business. He's replacing his father, but he's not a big business type. And the dominatrix starts getting into saying, you can't do this job. Your mother thinks you're an idiot. And she starts insulting him really at a base level. You might be wondering why I'm spending my time going to films like this. You might think, Stanton, you claim you want to be famous like Carl Hart and Maya Salovitz. they're not spending their time going to movies about dominatrixes. That's not where they go in their off hours.
Well, then
But the
spill it.
film ends up
What are you
with
up
the two
to?
of them
Yeah.
together. This is a little unrealistic. They sort of sort it out and they say, you know, you should run the business, the dominatrix, because she's got that kind of a personality. So the last film, those two films are American films. The last film is called Full Time. Full Time, what's that title suggest? Like you're busy. It's a French film. Eric Gravel is the director. Julie is played by Laurie Calamy. A single mother is the head chambermaid of a five-star hotel, and she must navigate the overwhelming demands of her life. It's filmed at a breakneck pace. It's like filmed like a trauma drama. It's filmed like a high energy mystery or war movie. Because there's a strike, it's in Paris. There's a strike going on. She has two children. She's a single parent. She's constantly late, trying to catch a train that isn't working, getting a bus, hitching rides, borrowing money. So she applies for a marketing job and she doesn't hear back meanwhile. And she can never reach her ex-husband, who doesn't seem to be interested in playing a fatherly role. So it seems kind of dismal. And she gets fired because she's late so much at a regular job. And she takes her kids to a theme park. And on the way to the theme park, you know, in that film about the dominatrix Sanctuary, at some points in the film, you're thinking, where's this going to go? Is he or she going to get violent with the other person? You know, you're a little bit on the edge of your seat. How far can they take this? And I had that same feeling in Full Time, because in Full Time, she takes her kids to this amusement park and a speeding train is going by. And I said, she's not going to throw herself in front of the train, is she? But she's not. That's not a possibility. I don't know if that anxiety was intentional from the director. She's not going to do that to her children. She's just not going to do that. And in the case of Michelle Williams, she's a sculptress. She has a really bad relationship with her landlady, who's a more famous artist than her and who sort of never fixes the water heater. She worked for her mother at an art school. And when she's at her exhibit, her father is played by Judd Hirsch, comes in. By the way, Michelle Williams made two great films this year. The other one is the biography of the great, director, where she plays his mother. She plays a Jewish mother who's having an affair. And I saw that film too. It's just remarkable. So this has been a great year for her. And in both of those, Judd Hirsch appears in both of those films. In this film, he plays her father, and he doesn't, nobody gets abused in this films. He doesn't abuse her, but when he comes to her exhibit, he's mainly he's divorced from her mother. He looks at her artwork for like 2 seconds, and then meanwhile, he's trying to pick up some woman. Judd Hirsch, by the way, is in his 80s now, and he's starring in all these movies himself. So in all of these movies, there's a potential for trauma. There's a potential for a person, the star, to go over the edge. But no one in any of the films does that. And in all of the films, you could say, well, their parents treated them in a traumatic way. In Sanctuary, the guy's mother thinks he's an idiot. In Full Time, she doesn't have contact with her mother. So they're sort of on their own. And I'm going to go back to Manohla Dargis as a film critic for the New York Times. I'm going to return to the Kelly Reichardt movie. The stubbornly independent filmmaker Kelly Reichardt makes small-scale movies rooted in specific worlds, both inner and outer. Nearly all take place in Oregon, where she's lived a long time. She traveled back in time for her last movie, First Cow, which I saw. It's about two guys, one Asian and one guy who is offbeat. They're in the gold rush, but they don't find any gold. But one of the guys can really make great biscuits with cream. And you can make a lot of money doing that in the gold rush. But they don't actually have milk. So they have to go and steal milk from some guy's cow. And that's in that place and time, that's a capital offense. If you get caught, you're going to be dead. So it's a drama. It's sort of a capitalism high achievement film, and it's an outsider film. A moving chronicle. This is her description of First Cow. Everything I said about Maya Solovitz and Carl Art being famous while I'm watching movies, I'm going to doubt that either of them went to see First Cow. First Cow is a moving chronicle of love, land, and capitalism set in the Oregon Territory. Reichardt is back on more familiar ground in her latest Showing Up, a wonderful slice of life set in present-day Portland, and is about something that she knows intimately, making art. I'm just going to repeat what I said earlier. The movies love tortured artists, flaming geniuses who thunder against the establishment, aesthetic conventions, their historical epics, etc., etc. No one rages or slashes a canvas at Showing Up. And even that woman that she curses out on the phone, at the very end of the film, Michelle Williams is seen walking off with her. And this is how Manohla Dargis describes that. The women get under each other's skin. I put this in bold. But like everyone else in Lizzie's life, Lizzie's the Michelle Williams artist, her family, her colleagues, the art students, her cat, and a pigeon who stays a while. Joe, who's sort of her enemy, the woman who doesn't, her landlady who doesn't fix the heater, water heater, Joe sustains her. For Lizzie, making art is an act of self-creation, but it is also and always an act of communion, a way of being in the world with other people. And this is a summary, Manohla Dargis's summary of Reichardt's movies, the director. Things happen in Reichardt's movies, minor, fleeting, and profound things, just like in life. So these are all movies about people living their lives. In the movie, the French movie, where Full Time, where I'm worried she's going to commit suicide, she had applied for a job as a marketing manager, and she needs money. Her husband's unreliable. While she's at the theme park, she gets a phone call that she got the job. So all of these movies are about people facing dire circumstances emotionally and in their lives practically. All of them hang in there, continue to deal with the people that are important to them. And in all of these movies, they end up okay. They don't commit suicide. They don't bemoan their lives. They carry on, they function fully, they deal with the people in their lives. They all have an internal purpose and a goal in life. And so I just want to point out, although these are movies it's unlikely a lot of people are going to see, they're sort of the answer to the trauma film, where people are permanently scarred and grieved in grief because of all the bad things that have happened to them in life. And that's what the film is about, tracing back to all the bad things that happened to them in life. And just to embody Michelle Williams, she's famous for that happening in her real life. And yet, all of the three movies and the main characters in the three movies, all of the relationships, there's not a mean person in any of the films. Nobody's trying to harm anybody. People are just doing their own thing, which doesn't always coincide with what the hero or the heroine needs. And maybe that's true with Michelle Williams as well. She did get, by the way, she did marry again. She has 3 children. So she's carrying on with life. And when they interview Michelle Williams, who's a very private person, this is what she says about herself. Her purpose in becoming well-known is she doesn't want to be well-known so people will follow her around. She wants to become well-known because as an artist, she wants to describe scenarios that real regular people go through, that they deal with so as to engage and encourage people through life. She's the person who's living, like the characters in these movies, a purposeful life in the face of a few drawbacks. She has a few advantages. I don't know, maybe I'll just mention offhand. She lives in an adjoining neighborhood to me in Brooklyn. A remarkable number of famous people live. She lived at Burnham Hill. And somewhere I read she sold the house. I imagine she sort of lived in an apartment around there because there were a couple pictures of her walking with her child. But then I read she sold the house that she owned with Keith Ledger for $27 million to buy a bigger house for $36 million. So that Lucy and Wendy scenario, that's a movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
Their message is the Life Process program. I hope we don't sound terribly heartless, is a no trauma. I mean, we deal with people's trauma. We listen to people's stories. But it's about life proceeding based on people's best chances to go ahead, to learn from their past, to have a purpose that allows them to get ahead and to succeed in life. So, and to succeed in financial ways, that's true, but to succeed emotionally with themselves, with the universe, and with those people like their children who are closest to them.